The rain had started just after sunset, slicking the hills above Los Angeles with a silver sheen that blurred the city's lights below. On Mulholland Drive, the winding road curved through mist like a restless serpent. Allison Reed gripped the steering wheel of her beat-up silver Honda, squinting through the rain as the wipers fought against the downpour. She was driving home from her second job at the Echo Park Diner. Exhausted and half-blind from fatigue. It was then that she saw the car, a black Maserati, flipped halfway down the ravine, steam hissing from its hood, one headlight still blinking faintly through the fog. Her heart clenched. She hit the brakes hard, gravel spraying as her car skidded to a stop. For a moment she sat frozen, the rain hammering the roof, thunder rolling somewhere over the canyons. Then instinct took over. She threw open her door and ran into the darkness, shoes sinking in mud, hands gripping at wet weeds as she stumbled toward the wreck. "Hey, can you hear me?" She shouted into the storm. A faint cough answered her. A boy's voice. She reached the driver's side, knee-deep in slippery mud. Inside, a teenage boy, maybe 17, was slumped against the airbag, face cut, his right leg pinned under the crushed dashboard. The smell of gasoline was sharp and urgent. "Oh my God," she whispered, adrenaline kicking through her exhaustion. "You're gonna be okay. I'm gonna get you out." He blinked at her through blood and rain. "My phone." "I can't forget the phone," she said, gripping the mangled metal. "Can you move your leg?" He cried out. The sound cut through the rain like glass. Allison's eyes darted to the slope above. She couldn't do this alone, but there was no time. The car was hissing louder now, a dangerous gurgle of leaking fuel. "Stay with me," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "What's your name?" "Luca." "Okay, Luca," she said, pushing against the door with her shoulder. "We're getting out of here." The metal shrieked but didn't budge. She turned, looked around, then spotted a fallen branch thick enough to use as leverage. She jammed it into the gap, braced her foot against a rock, and pulled with everything she had. The door gave way suddenly, throwing her backward into the mud. Her arm burned with pain, but she didn't stop. She crawled back, reached for Luca, and tugged. He was heavy, his leg dragging uselessly. "Come on," she gasped. "Just one more push." A flash lightning cracked above, and in that second, she saw the car's interior burst into a small flame near the engine. "Move!" she screamed, dragging him free with one last desperate pull. They fell together into the mud as the Maserati exploded behind them, the heat slamming through the rain, scattering shards of glass like fiery snow. They lay there coughing, covered in mud and smoke, the orange glow flickering across the soaked hillside. "Jesus Christ," Luca whispered hoarsely, staring at the flames. You saved me." Allison pressed her shaking hand against his chest, feeling the frantic rhythm of his heart beneath his soaked designer shirt. "You're lucky I came by," she said, breathless. He looked at her, really looked, for the first time. Even through pain and shock, there was something in his eyes that startled her. Not just fear, but sorrow. "Call an ambulance," he murmured. Tell them not to call my dad." But it was too late for that. The next morning, Allison woke in a hospital bed, her left arm bandaged, her throat raw from smoke. The fluorescent lights hummed above her. She remembered the explosion, the rain, the boy's name, Luca, and then everything went black. When she opened her eyes again, the room wasn't empty. A man stood near the window, his silhouette outlined by the morning light filtering through the blinds. He wore a charcoal suit, the kind that didn't wrinkle, with an expensive watch glinting at his wrist. His presence filled the space, heavy and cold. "Allison Reed?" he asked. His voice was smooth, deep, and faintly accented. Not foreign, exactly, but refined in a way that didn't belong to her world of cheap coffee and late shifts. "Yes," she said cautiously, trying to sit up. "Who are you?" He turned toward her, and for the first time she saw his face, sharply handsome, weathered, his eyes an unsettling shade of gray. "My name is Victor Navarro." She froze. She knew that name. Everyone in Los Angeles did. Rumors painted him as something between a philanthropist and a ghost, a businessman with powerful enemies, the kind who funded hospitals and nightclubs but was whispered to have darker ties beneath the surface. Her pulse jumped. "You're the father," he said, stepping closer, "of the boy you pulled from that burning car." He reached into his coat pocket and placed something on her bedside table. A folded newspaper. The headline read, "Mystery Woman Saves Teen in Late-Night Crash. Son of Business Tycoon Victor Navarro Survives." Her stomach tightened. "I don't know how they—" she began. He held up a hand, silencing her. "The media will tire of this by tomorrow, but I won't." There was a long pause. He studied her face like a man reading an ancient text. "You risked your life for my son," he said quietly. "You didn't know who he was. You didn't ask for anything in return." "That is rare." She didn't know what to say. "Anyone would have—" "No," he interrupted, his voice firm. "Not anyone." He reached into his coat again and handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a diamond pendant shaped like a teardrop. "I can't accept this," she said quickly, pushing it back. "You will," he said. "And you'll accept more. Because from this day forward, Allison Reed, you are under my protection." His words felt heavy, final. She stared at him, heartbeat loud in her ears. What does that mean? Victor Navarro's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "It means," he said softly, "you've just become very important to a very dangerous man." Then he turned, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he paused, his reflection caught in the polished glass. "Oh, one more thing," he said. "Next month, the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce will host its annual gala. I've arranged for you to be honored there. As Woman of the Year." Allison blinked. "That's insane. I'm a waitress. I'm nobody." Victor's eyes met hers. Unreadable. "Not anymore." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving her alone with the rain still whispering against the window, the faint scent of smoke in her hair, and a diamond pendant gleaming like a warning on the table beside her. She didn't know yet, but that night on Mulholland Drive had bound her to something vast and perilous. Something that would unravel everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and survival. And somewhere in a guarded mansion above Beverly Hills, Victor Navarro was watching the storm roll in, thinking not about the son who almost died, but about the woman who'd saved him. The woman who would soon change everything. The morning light in East Hollywood was weak, filtered through a haze of smog and memory. The rain had passed, leaving puddles that mirrored telephone wires and rusted fire escapes. Allison Reed stood in the small kitchenette of her apartment, the smell of burnt toast mixing with cheap coffee and antiseptic from the hospital bandage still wrapped around her arm. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The first calls were from journalists, eager voices asking how it felt to be a hero. The next were from charities, then a morning TV show, then strangers who somehow found her number. By noon, she had turned it off completely. But even in silence, she could feel it. The invisible current of attention pulling her into a world she didn't belong to. The only voice she wanted to hear was her best friend's. Maya showed up with takeout and an open mouth. "You're on Channel 5 again," she said, dropping a paper bag on the counter. "They're calling you the miracle girl of Mulholland." Allison groaned. "Please tell me that's not real." "It's real, babe," Maya said, sliding her phone across the table. On the screen was a glossy image. Allison's face outside the hospital, her hair damp, her eyes red, captioned with, "Waitress turns hero in late night fire." "I didn't even give them permission to use this." "Doesn't matter. You're trending." Maya smirked, then softened. "You okay, though? You look, I don't know, spooked." Allison hesitated. "Someone came to see me this morning." "Before discharge, Luca's father." Maya raised an eyebrow. "The Victor Navarro." "Yeah. Oh my God." Maya leaned forward, whispering as if the walls might be listening. "Allie, that guy's loaded. Like shadow money loaded. People say he owns clubs, restaurants, half of downtown. But he's dangerous." "I know what people say," Allison murmured. "He didn't threaten you, did he?" "No, he thanked me, gave me this." She lifted the pendant from her pocket, its diamond gleaming even in the dull light. Maya's eyes widened. Holy hell, that's not costume jewelry. Allison stared at it for a long moment before setting it back down. "He said I'm under his protection now." Maya frowned. "That doesn't sound like gratitude. That sounds like possession." Before Allison could answer, a knock rattled the apartment door. Both women froze. "Allie?" came a deep voice. It's Mr. Navarro's assistant. Maya mouthed what the hell. Allison hesitated, then opened the door just enough to see a man in a black suit. His hair slicked back, posture military straight. He handed her a white envelope embossed with gold lettering. Mr. Navarro asked me to deliver this personally, he said. He sends his regards. What is it? An invitation. The man's eyes flicked briefly to the pendant in her hand. You should wear that when you come. Then he turned and disappeared down the hall. Inside the envelope was a card written in elegant script. Victor Navarro cordially invites you to the annual Navarro Foundation Charity Gala, the Four Seasons Hotel, Beverly Hills. Formal attire required. At the bottom, in pen, was a handwritten note. You've already earned your place among them. Allison felt something twist in her chest. The night of the gala came faster than she expected. She tried to convince herself not to go, but curiosity and pressure won. The city shimmered beneath her as she rode up Wilshire Boulevard in a borrowed black dress, her hair pinned, her nerves sharp enough to cut glass. The Four Seasons lobby was a world of gold and glass and expensive laughter. Champagne glasses clinked beneath chandeliers the size of cars. Men in tuxedos and women in diamonded gowns turned to stare as she entered. A reporter whispered, "That's her." Cameras shifted. Flashes popped. And then she saw him, Victor Navarro, descending the grand staircase like a man who owned gravity. His eyes found hers instantly, as if he'd been waiting all night. "Allison," he said, taking her hand. "You came. You made it hard to say no." He smiled faintly. "You'll learn that's one of my talents." He guided her through the ballroom, introducing her to people whose names she'd only seen in headlines: investors, city officials, producers. Their smiles were polite, their eyes assessing. But Victor's presence seemed to part the crowd like water. As they stopped near a table of white roses, Allison saw Luca leaning against a column, his leg in a discreet brace, a glass of something clear in his hand. His bruises had faded, but the sadness in his eyes hadn't. He saw her and smiled. Slow and genuine. "You look better out of a burning car," she said softly. He laughed. Just once, and she realized how young he really was. "You shouldn't be here. Your father insisted." "Yeah," he said darkly, glancing toward Victor across the room. "That's the problem." Before she could ask, the lights dimmed. A host stepped onto the stage announcing awards. Allison listened half-heartedly, until she heard her own name. Tonight, the speaker said, "We honor a woman whose courage reminded this city that humanity still shines brightest in its darkest hours. Please welcome our Woman of the Year, Allison Reed." The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed again. Allison froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. Victor stood beside her, his expression unreadable. "Go," he whispered. "They're waiting." Her legs carried her forward somehow, her vision flickering under the stage lights. She reached the podium, looked out over hundreds of elegant strangers, and said the only truth she could find. "I'm not a hero," she began, her voice trembling. "I'm just someone who did what anyone should do." Polite applause. But she caught Luca's eyes, proud, sad, and scared all at once. When she stepped off stage, Victor was waiting. He took her hand again, his fingers strong, possessive. "You handled that beautifully," he murmured. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said quietly. "You didn't need to." He leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear. "Some gifts choose their owners." Later that night, long after the applause had faded, Allison stood alone on the hotel terrace overlooking the city. The sound of jazz drifted from inside. Her heels pinched. Her heart ached. "Quite a view," said a voice behind her. Luca. He joined her, hands shoved into his pockets, the moonlight catching the faint scar on his cheek. "Your dad likes you in the spotlight," she said. "He likes control," Luca replied. "You just became his latest obsession." Allison turned to him. "Why are you warning me?" "Because I owe you," he said simply. "And because I don't want you to end up like everyone else who gets too close to him." Something in his tone chilled her. "What do you mean, everyone else?" Luca's jaw tightened. "Just be careful. He doesn't lose things he thinks belong to him." She wanted to laugh it off, but his eyes stopped her. There was truth there. Heavy, dangerous truth. He looked out over the city, then back at her. You changed something the night you saved me. You don't even know what it cost him." Before she could ask what that meant, Victor appeared at the doorway, his gaze slicing through the crowd until it found them. Luca straightened, his voice low. "You should go. He hates questions." The music swelled. The wind picked up. Allison glanced once more at the man she'd saved, then turned toward the one who now claimed her as his dot as Victor led her back inside. The pendant at her throat caught the chandelier's light, a teardrop of fire against her skin, and in that glittering ballroom, surrounded by power and danger disguised as elegance, Allison felt it for the first time. The imbalance, the shift between gratitude and ownership, between safety and captivity, between the girl who saved a life and the woman now being claimed by its debt. The week after the gala blurred into a fever dream of cameras, headlines, and men in suits who spoke her name like it belonged to them. Allison tried to return to her life at the Echo Park Diner, but nothing fit anymore. Customers whispered. Her manager smiled too much. Strangers left $100 tips just to watch her blush, and every morning, a sleek black car waited outside her building. She told herself not to get in. She told herself this was all too much, that Victor Navarro's world wasn't hers, that he was the kind of man people warned you about in half-whispered rumors. But one afternoon, curiosity and exhaustion overpowered fear. She opened the door and slid inside. The driver didn't speak. The car smelled like leather and tobacco, and when they reached the Navarro estate, high in the hills above Beverly Hills, it felt like crossing into another country. Iron gates, marble fountains, roses lined like soldiers along the driveway. The kind of beauty that hides something dangerous underneath. Victor was waiting in the garden, wearing a white shirt open at the throat, sleeves rolled, a drink sweating in his hand. The late afternoon light carved his face into sharp planes of gold and shadow. "You came," he said, smiling faintly. "I thought I'd make it clear I'm not for sale," she said, crossing her arms. Victor laughed softly. "You still think that's what this is?" "I don't know what this is. You give me gifts, invitations, chauffeurs. I didn't earn any of this." He set down his glass. "You earned my gratitude." "That's not nothing. And what does your gratitude cost?" "Nothing," he said, then paused. "Until it costs everything." His words sent a flicker of unease through her, but his tone was soft, almost tender. "Walk with me," he said. They followed a cobblestone path that wound between citrus trees and marble statues. The scent of rain lingered in the air, though the sun burned above them. Allison couldn't stop watching him, the calm confidence, the stillness, the way the world seemed to bend subtly toward his gravity. At a small stone terrace overlooking the canyon, he turned to her. "Tell me something, Allison. Before that night, before you saved my son. What did you want from life?" She hesitated. "Something simple. A job that paid the rent. Maybe a chance to go back to school. Peace, I guess." He smiled slightly. "Peace is overrated. It makes people forget who they are. And what are you, Victor?" she asked. His eyes met hers, gray, unwavering. "A man who has lost too much to pretend I can be good." There was a silence between them, taut and humming. Then, without breaking eye contact, he reached out and brushed a raindrop or a tear from her cheek. "Don't be afraid of me," he said. "I'm not." He smiled, but the kind of smile that hides fire behind it. "You should be." That night, back at her apartment, Allison found a small black box on her doorstep. Inside was a key and a note written in the same elegant handwriting, a gesture of trust. "No locks between us." She stared at it for a long time before setting it aside, her pulse quickening. Later, she dreamt of fire, of the car exploding again, of Luca's eyes staring through smoke, of Victor's voice whispering her name like a vow and a threat. A few days later, she returned to the diner, hoping to reclaim some normalcy. The lunch rush had just begun when a figure appeared at the counter, tall, lean, a hoodie pulled low. When he looked up, she recognized the blue eyes instantly. "Luca? Can we talk?" he asked quietly. She led him to a corner booth. He looked nervous, older somehow, the bruises gone, replaced by something darker. "I shouldn't have come," he said. "But I had to warn you again. About your father?" He nodded. "You think he's helping you, right? Giving you things, protecting you. But that's what he does. He builds cages made of favors. He said I'm under his protection. Luca gave a bitter laugh. That's his way of saying he owns you. She stared at him. You talk like you hate him. I owe him my life. And I hate him for it. The confession hung between them, heavy. Luca, she said softly, what really happened that night? The car crash. Why didn't you want him called? He looked away, eyes glassy. Because I wasn't supposed to be in LA, I was running. From him. Allison felt her stomach drop. Running from your own father? He doesn't forgive betrayal, Luca said. And I did something he'll never forget. He stood abruptly, eyes darting toward the door. Don't trust him, Allison, please. Wait, but he was gone before she could stop him. That evening, Victor called. His tone was calm, almost amused. You had a visitor today. She froze. How do you know that? You live in my city, Allison. I see everything that touches what's mine. Luca's not Luca, Victor interrupted, his voice hardening, is impulsive. He doesn't understand what I'm trying to protect. You saved him once. Don't let him destroy you now. Victor, But the line went dead dot by the next morning. Luca had vanished again. No one had seen him at the estate. Victor's men searched the city, quiet but ruthless. Allison heard whispers through the news. An internal family matter at the Navarro Foundation. A canceled fundraiser. Rumors of betrayal inside the Navarro Empire. And that afternoon, while Allison was walking home, a black SUV slowed beside her. The window rolled down. A man she didn't recognize leaned out, his expression neutral but cold. Miss Reed, Mr. Navarro requests your presence, immediately. Her pulse quickened. Now? Now, she hesitated, but the man's gaze made it clear she didn't have a choice. Inside the Navarro estate, the air felt heavier, charged. Victor stood in the great hall, staring at a photo of Luca on the wall. Allison, he said softly, without turning. Tell me the truth. When did you last see my son? Her throat tightened. Yesterday. At the diner. He turned then, his eyes sharp and tired. What did he say? Just that he was scared. Victor's expression didn't change, but the silence that followed was suffocating. Luca doesn't understand loyalty, he said finally. He doesn't see that everything I do, everything is to protect him. He stepped closer, his voice low, almost broken. Do you know what it's like to love someone so much that you have to destroy them to keep them safe? Allison shook her head slowly. That's not love, Victor. That's control. He stared at her, and for a moment she thought she saw something human in his eyes. Pain, regret, maybe even longing. Then it vanished. You shouldn't have lied to me, he said quietly. Her blood ran cold. I didn't, but he was already walking away, calling for one of his men. Find Luca, and make sure Miss Reed understands the price of keeping secrets. Allison's heart pounded as the guards moved closer. The pendant at her neck felt suddenly heavy like a chain. She realized, too late, that the night she saved Luca had never freed anyone. It had only begun the debt. The storm came before dawn. It wasn't thunder and rain, it was something deeper, older. The kind of storm that moved beneath the skin of the earth. When Clara woke, the forest was drenched in silver mist. The clearing was gone, swallowed by fog, as though the night itself had erased all proof of what had happened. Her clothes were damp, her heartbeat uneven. Lila slept beside her, curled beneath a blanket inside a rough wooden cabin she didn't remember entering. She sat up slowly. The room smelled of smoke, pine resin, and something metallic blood, faint but lingering. The fire in the stone hearth burned low, its light breathing over old timber walls and strange carvings etched into the beams, crescents, claws, and the shape of a wolf's head facing the sky. A man stood by the window, his back to her. Even in silence, she recognized the way he filled the space. Rowan Hale. You didn't dream it, he said without turning. The trial began when you accepted the summons. I didn't accept anything, she said, her voice rough. I came for my daughter. Rowan turned. His eyes weren't gold now. They were amber, still unnatural, but softer. He looked tired, as though every word he spoke cost him something. And you will have her, he said. But not until the moon has judged you. Clara rose, her hands shaking. I don't understand what that means. He stepped closer. The scent of rain and wildness clung to him. You will. The moon trial isn't about strength. It's about truth. It shows you what you hide from others and from yourself. He paused, studying her. Your fear. Your grief. Your desire to control what you cannot. Clara's throat tightened. You don't know me. I know loss when I see it. His words hung between them like the fog outside. She looked away, blinking hard. The image of her husband, Mark, flashed behind her eyes. The fire, the sirens, the way she'd screamed his name while the house came down in flames. The world had ended that night, and she had carried the ashes ever since. Lila stirred in her sleep, murmuring something that sounded like Daddy. Clara turned back to Rowan. If this is real, if she's marked or cursed or whatever you say, then tell me how to fix it. Tell me what I have to do. He moved to the door, pulling on a dark coat that looked older than he was. You follow me. You don't run. You don't speak unless I tell you. The trial watches everything. The trial? You mean the moon? The moon, he said quietly, and the ones who live under it. Outside, the forest was still dripping from the storm. Mist clung to the pines and the air shimmered faintly as if reality itself was thin here. Clara followed him down a narrow trail that wound between moss-covered rocks. Every sound felt amplified. The snap of twigs, the distant rush of water, the soft rhythm of her own breath. They reached a ravine where a river cut through the mountain like a scar. Rowan stopped at the edge, where a narrow bridge of rough-hewn planks stretched across the chasm. Cross, he said. She stared at it. That thing looks ready to collapse. It won't if you don't look down. She hesitated, then stepped onto the bridge. The wood groaned under her weight. The river below churned black, swallowing moonlight. Halfway across, the wind picked up, carrying whispers that didn't belong to the living. She froze. Rowan's voice came low behind her. They know your name. What? The spirits of the hollow, he said. They feed on fear. Keep walking. Her pulse thundered. She forced herself forward, one step at a time, until her boots touched solid ground again. Rowan followed, silent as shadow. They came to a valley where the mist lifted, revealing an ancient circle of stones. Each one was carved with symbols that pulsed faintly, like heartbeats under rock. This is where the first blood pact was made, Rowan said. When man and Volf were one. The trial begins here. Clara swallowed hard. And what happens if I fail? You'll know, he said. Because you won't wake again. Before she could answer, the ground beneath her feet trembled. The symbols began to glow, casting silver light across the clearing. A hum filled the air, low and deep, rising from the stones themselves. The air smelled like metal and storm dot, then she heard it, a whisper close to her ear. Clara Jennings, do you accept the truth that binds you? She spun around, but there was no one there. Only the wind. Rowan's eyes gleamed. Answer. Her voice trembled. Yes, the light flared. The world tilted. For a heartbeat, she wasn't in the forest anymore. She stood in her old home, the night of the fire. Smoke filled the air. Mark's voice echoed from upstairs, shouting her name. The heat burned her skin. She tried to run toward him, but the flames twisted, becoming shapes wolves made of fire, snarling, blocking her path. She screamed. Then the fire shifted, and she saw something she had never seen before. A man standing in the doorway, his eyes glowing gold. Watching Rowan, her heart stopped. No, she whispered. That's not possible. The vision collapsed. She was back in the clearing, gasping, tears streaking her face. Rowan stood a few feet away, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed on the ground. What did you see? He asked softly. She stared at him, her voice breaking. You were there. The night my husband died. I saw you. He didn't deny it. Didn't move. The silence between them stretched until it felt like the forest itself was listening. Finally, he said, You weren't meant to remember. Her breath caught. What did you do? He looked up and the gold in his eyes burned like guilt. I tried to save him. Save him? She took a step closer, trembling. You mean you killed him? No, Rowan said sharply. I took the fire that was meant for you. The Hollow King marked your family long before that night. Your husband made a bargain he couldn't keep. Clara's knees nearly gave out. A bargain? Rowan reached for her, but she backed away. Don't touch me. The ground trembled again, harder this time. The symbols flared crimson. The mist began to move as if it were alive. Rowan turned, eyes flashing. They're coming, he said. The Hollow King's shades. He knows the trial has begun. Then we run, Clara said, grabbing his arm. We get Lila and he caught her wrist. If you leave now, you forfeit the child. The words hit like a blade. From the fog, dark shapes began to form tall, robed figures with hollow eyes that burned faintly blue. The air filled with the sound of distant howling, echoing through the valley. Rowan shifted, his voice low and fierce. Stay behind me. But Clara didn't move. She felt the blood in her veins pulse with something strange, something wild and ancient. For a moment her fear turned to fire, and when one of the shadow creatures lunged at her, she raised her hand and the creature stopped mid-air, as if crushed by invisible force. Rowan turned. Eyes wide, Clara stared at her trembling hands, the air around her crackling. What? What's happening to me? Rowan's voice was barely a whisper. The moon has already chosen. The light of dawn touched the edge of the valley, then pale and cold. The shadows hissed and vanished into smoke. Silence fell again, except for the pounding of Clara's heart. Rowan stepped closer, watching her with something like awe. The trial has begun, he said, his voice soft but certain. And you, Clara Jennings, are no longer just a mortal mother. She looked at him, tears still burning her eyes. Then what am I? His gaze lingered on her face, reverent and sorrowful all at once. The moon's heir, he said. And my fated mate. The world went still. Outside the clearing. The wind rose again, carrying the distant cry of wolves greeting the dawn. The Navarro estate felt colder. The next morning, not because of the air, but because of the silence. The kind that makes you feel watched even when you're alone. Allison sat in a small guest room on the second floor, staring at the city below. Her phone was gone. Her key, the one Victor had given her, was missing too. The guards outside her door weren't subtle. Every time she moved, one of them shifted his weight. The sound of leather and metal like a warning. She wasn't a guest, any more that she was a possession under house arrest. When Victor entered, he didn't knock. He carried a glass of red wine and that unnerving calm, the kind of calm that came before storms. You've barely eaten, he said, setting the glass on the table beside her. I'm not hungry. You should be. You'll need your strength. For what? She asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. He sat across from her, his posture perfect, his gray eyes studying her like she was an equation he couldn't solve. Luca called you before he disappeared, he said. I know he did. Allison swallowed. He was scared. Victor's jaw tightened. Of me? Of what you might do to him. He laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. He doesn't understand what danger really is. Allison met his eyes. Neither do you. He leaned forward. You think I hurt people, Allison. But what I really do, what I've always done, is prevent worse men from destroying everything I love. And that makes you the hero. She asked bitterly. No. His voice dropped, dark and quiet. It makes me necessary. That night, the house came alive with motion. Men whispered through hallways, phones buzzed, doors opened and slammed. From the window, Allison saw black SUVs pulling away from the estate in a convoy, their taillights cutting through the fog like blood-red eyes. Something was happening. Something big. She waited until the guards outside her room changed shifts, a brief overlap of silence, then slipped into the hallway barefoot, heart pounding. The house was massive, but she remembered the way to Victor's office. When she reached it, she froze. The door was slightly open. Inside, two men stood before Victor's desk, their voices low and urgent. She's clean, boss. We checked her phone, her accounts, everything. She didn't tip him off. Victor's voice came steady. And Luca? No trace. Not at the safe house, not at the marina. But we found this. A photo landed on the desk. A grainy shot of Luca at Union Station, boarding a train north. Victor exhaled slowly. San Francisco, he said. He's running to her. Allison's breath caught. Her? Victor's tone hardened. Bring him back, alive. And if he won't come? Victor looked up. Then you bring me her. The men nodded and left. Allison stayed frozen until she couldn't breathe. Then she turned quietly and ran. 2 hours later, she was on the road in a stolen car, a guard's old Chevy parked near the servants' quarters. Her hands shook on the wheel as she sped down Sunset Boulevard, neon lights flashing like sirens across her windshield. San Francisco. That's where Luca was running. That's where she had to go, but more than fear. There was anger burning inside her now, anger at being caged, at being manipulated, at being turned into someone else's prize. By dawn, she'd crossed into the Central Valley. The sun rose over endless fields, the world shifting from the glitter of Los Angeles to something quieter, lonelier. The hum of the highway felt almost merciful. She stopped at a gas station outside Modesto and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, pale, tired, but alive. For the first time since that night on Mulholland, she felt like herself again. Until a black SUV pulled into the parking lot behind her stomach dropped. She didn't wait. She grabbed her bag, bolted through the back exit, and ran across a field toward a drainage ditch. A voice shouted behind her, one of Victor's men. Allison, stop! She didn't. She ran until her lungs burned, her shoes sinking in mud, the pendant slapping against her throat like a brand she couldn't tear off. When she finally reached the far side of the field, a car pulled up beside her, a faded blue pickup, engine rattling. The window rolled down. Allison! Luca. She nearly collapsed. He got out, helped her into the truck, then peeled onto the road. They drove for miles in silence before he spoke. I told you to stay away, he said softly. I couldn't. They were going to find you. They always do, he muttered. He's not just angry, Allie. He's scared. There's something he thinks, something about that night. What could I possibly know? He didn't answer right away. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. The car crash. It wasn't an accident. She turned to him, stunned. What? I staged it, he said, voice low. I needed a way out. I thought if you thought I was dead, I could disappear. Allison's heart stopped. You wanted him to think you died? Luca nodded. But then you pulled me out. You saved me, and suddenly the whole thing fell apart. Her mouth went dry. So the night I saved you, I ruined your escape. He looked at her, guilt heavy in his eyes. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of this. She stared out the window, the world blurring by. He's never going to stop, is he? No, Luca said. Not until he's sure he owns us both. By nightfall they reached the Bay Area. Luca drove to a small house on the outskirts of Oakland, a place that looked borrowed from another life. Inside, the walls were bare, the air thick with dust and secrecy. Allison sat on the couch, trembling. What now? Luca dropped onto the floor, his head in his hands. We run, maybe Portland, maybe Canada. We keep moving until he can't find us. She shook her head. He'll always find us, then we make him stop. Their eyes met, desperate, scared, but bound by something fierce now. Luca moved closer. You changed everything, Allison. You made him weak. He doesn't know what to do with that. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers. He's dangerous, yes. But he's also human. And humans break. The space between them dissolved. For a heartbeat, they forgot the danger, the pursuit, the bloodline that chained them both to the same man. His lips brushed hers, soft, trembling. Wrong and right all at once. When they pulled apart, she whispered, He'll kill us for this. I know, Luca said. But I'd rather die free than live in his cage. Outside, thunder rolled over the bay, echoing the one thing both of them knew. The fall had begun, and before it ended, someone was going to pay the price of love. The storm rolled in before dawn, sweeping across the bay like a living thing. Rain pounded the roof of the little Oakland house, wind rattling the windows, and for a moment, Allison thought the world itself was trying to erase them. Luca was already awake, standing at the window with his hands clenched on the sill. He hadn't slept. Neither of them had. Every sound outside felt like a threat. Every flash of headlights on the wet street made her heart lurch. They'll find us, she whispered. I know. His voice was hoarse. But we can't keep running. He turned toward her, eyes fierce in the dim light. I'm done being afraid of him. Allison wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders. You're talking about standing up to Victor Navarro, your father, a man who controls half of Los Angeles. You can't just stop being afraid of that. I can if it's for you. His words hung in the air, soft but electric. She felt them in her chest, in the ache behind her ribs. Luca, he stepped closer. You changed something in me. Allie, that night on Mulholland, when you dragged me out of that car, I thought you just saved my life. But now I think you gave me one. Before she could reply, a sound split through the storm, the low growl of engines. Allison's breath caught. Through the rain-blurred window, she saw them, two black SUVs turning slowly onto the street. They're here, she whispered. Luca's face hardened. He reached under the table, pulling out a small pistol wrapped in cloth. Luca, no. It's not for them, he said. It's for him. Thunder cracked. Tires screeched outside. The headlights cut through the curtains. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate raps that seemed to echo through her bones. Luca's hand trembled around the gun. Allison rose, heart hammering. The door swung open before either of them could move. Victor Navarro stepped inside, coat soaked from the rain, gray eyes calm as ever. 2 men flanked him, silent as shadows. Allison, he said quietly. Luca. Luca's voice broke through the silence, raw and shaking. How did you find us? Victor glanced around the small room, the worn furniture, the takeout containers, the blanket on the couch. You left a trail of mercy, son. You always do. He stepped closer, each footstep slow, deliberate. You were never running from me, Luca. You were running from yourself. Don't, Luca snapped. Don't turn this into some lesson. You destroyed everything. Mom, the family, me. Victor's jaw tightened. Your mother left because she couldn't live with what we are. She left because of you. The storm roared outside, lightning throwing white flashes across their faces, father and son. Mirror images divided by decades of guilt. Allison stepped between them. Stop it, both of you. Victor turned to her. You think he's innocent, Allison? You think you saved a boy? That car crash was his doing. He wanted to die rather than face what he'd done. Luca's breath caught. Tell her, son, Victor said softly. Tell her why you were running. Allison looked at Luca. What is he talking about? Luca's voice cracked. I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear. Mean for what to happen? Victor's tone was deadly calm. The night before the crash, my organization was ambushed. 3 of my men were killed. Someone leaked their route. Someone gave away our shipment schedule. Allison's throat went dry. You're saying, Victor nodded slowly. It was him. Luca's eyes filled with tears. I was trying to stop it, Allie. I thought if I gave their names to the police, they'd shut the operation down, no one would get hurt. But people did get hurt, Victor said. And when he realized what he'd done, he tried to end it on Mulholland Drive. The words hit like a blade. Allison staggered back. The storm outside blurred into a dull roar. Luca took a step toward her. I didn't want you to find me. I didn't want anyone to. But you showed up anyway. You saved me. Tears burned her eyes. You both used me. No, Luca said desperately. You saved me from him. Victor's voice cut through, sharp as glass. No, Allison. She saved him for me. He raised his hand. One of his men stepped forward, drawing a gun. Victor! Allison shouted. You don't have to do this. Victor's expression was unreadable. Every empire survives on one truth. Debts must be paid. In a split second, Luca moved. He shoved Allison aside, reaching for the gun at his belt. The shot echoed, deafening, burning the air. Then silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Victor stared at his son, eyes wide, and for the first time uncertain. Luca stood still, chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. The pistol slipped from his hand. Victor looked down. A dark bloom spread across his white shirt. Dad. Victor swayed, then fell to his knees, blood mixing with rain on the wooden floor. The storm howled. Allison rushed forward, catching him before he hit the ground. His eyes found hers, not angry now, not powerful, just human. You shouldn't have come back for him, he whispered. But I'm glad you did. She held him as he exhaled for the last time. Outside, the rain began to ease. By morning, the sky was pale and still. The SUVs were gone. The men had vanished. Only the sound of seagulls drifted through the broken calm. Luca sat on the porch steps, his hands stained with his father's blood, his eyes hollow. He wanted to own everything, he said quietly. And in the end, he lost the only thing that mattered. Allison stood beside him, her hair damp, the pendant still shining faintly at her throat. She unclasped it and held it out. What are you doing? He asked, ending it. She dropped the diamond teardrop into the mud. It sank, vanishing into the earth. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she reached out and took his hand. Where do we go now? He asked. Somewhere quiet, she said. Somewhere his name can't reach. He looked at her. Broken, but alive. Do you really think that's possible? She hesitated. I think it has to be. They drove north that evening, following Highway 1 along the cliffs where the ocean broke against the rocks. The sun dipped low, staining the sky orange and red. Allison leaned her head against the window, watching the world stretch out ahead of them, a new one. Uncertain but free. And as the coastline disappeared behind them, she whispered to the wind, I didn't save the cartel boss's son. I saved myself. But somewhere deep inside, she knew the truth, that every love born in fire leaves a scar, and every freedom is haunted by the price it cost. The world outside shimmered, endless and new. And for the first time since that night on Mulholland Drive, Allison Reed didn't look back.